Thank you.
And it's still not. So
Is this different than what's on?
I didn't think of it because it's on it. And
Okay. Okay.
I don't know where yet is that. I think you would need one of these for each
so I
of the
agree, that's
CBA.
ridiculous. That's not true. Like,
Okay.
so there's this meeting going on. Can we like resolve that? So
Okay.
But we've never done that.
because otherwise I have to bring it up publicly. I don't want to do that. So yeah. Bring it up now.
With that sense of back. Like if we're planning for the failure, it sends a bad message, I think.
I got one. Just very efficient.
Just that like the awkward talk.
No, it's different. Yeah.
I could, but I don't like to walk.
The girls over there, and
The more walking I do, the worse it hurts.
for a week.
So
And they finally went and got antibiotics. And Tom did that because he had it
I did
first.
that after the date happened. And no, because they said I can move. And I was just part of that.
I did like
So we're like, all it's gonna do is just expose you to mercury.
Oh, you had to go out back.
yeah.
I know.
Those have already got your place already used.
It's just a nerve, like a nerve
I don't think that one is, sorry.
which is not
Which one?
surprising.
I put this everywhere, but that one I think has not gone out, so you should grab one of
Okay,
them.
I read it. It was the same.
So
This is the full packet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
hello. Don't trip.
It's a make-work program for all of my fellow students.
That's good.
Yes, exactly. They need some. You need some more.
Listen, they have
Oh, I hate those. And then if you go up and down the stairs,
Who did he deploy to, Jamie
Recording in progress.
Ooh,
or Charlie
ready.
Carr?
What is this?
Okay.
Oh no, comment
Yeah,
is
perfect.
fun for the
Jamie's good. Jamie up here. And Jamie up here. Yeah.
she said, I know how my dad would drive me to the stairs back. So it was kind of, it was good.
Yeah. 2 weeks around the corner.
2 weeks from today. We were just talking about this morning. It's my brain. The actual school. Yeah. Anyway, fingers crossed.
You're all nice and healed, now it's just running. Let's see who plays better next.
Already. Hello.
Right? There you go. It does hurt. And
No.
I'll probably,
That's why I wore my scarf and my turtleneck.
change it or something. I can't drive with that anymore.
14.
Or at least you shouldn't. So I found, I never experienced it personally, but when I witnessed it, it was usually longer than ACL.
I felt so bad. Did it talk about the book?
They're concurrent prison sentences, not sequential.
Yeah, not what she got left. Did you say anything? Oh, it's a lot. And when the same teacher has to do 2 or 3 days, but she got nobody to.
So everything's okay.
So far away.
That's what I.
You've abandoned us
Business as
over
usual.
Stuck here in
I
front.
did math and I did language arts. And then I did science. But most of the time I was language arts. Yeah. Crazy.
Number 7.
Right, here's an article about the thing that it's based on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jan,
Hopeful.
Building around education.
There's a couple though. I'm not sure.
It is 6:30, and we're going to begin just a few items before we start today. The superintendent can't be with us tonight. He has a personal issue that's taken her out of town. Tim Law will be running the Zoom meeting, and me and other administrators will be authorized to speak on Dr. Roberts' behalf during budget discussions or anything else that comes up during the meeting. Also, as most people know, Roger Lohr retired as our team taker after the last meeting. We have identified a new minute taker, Catherine Gunn, who will be beginning soon, but not tonight. And so she'll be generating minutes from the Jack's video feed. And so I'm going to ask everyone, board members, public alike, please make sure that you speak clearly and distinctly into the microphone. Non-board members, please identify yourselves when you speak. Anyone, as usual, contributing public comment will need to identify yourself by first and last name and the ward in which you live. And I may slow the proceedings down a little bit by asking to spell names or things like that, but it's, we need to do that to make sure we get good minutes generated. So that being said, we're going to begin tonight with 2 public hearings. And the first public hearing is on the 2023-2024 Lebanon School District budget. I'm going to ask the business administrator to give us a brief introduction, and then we'll open the public hearing up to comments by board members and by the public.
so my name is Tim Ball, the business administrator. This public hearing is a chance to present any comments that the public may have or questions the public may have about our budget that we worked on through the fall. The $51,094,870 is a total gross budget that includes the operating fund, the general fund, which is the piece of the spending that is affected by your taxes. That's $49,424,870. The food service fund and the grants fund. Food service and the grants are typically budget neutral. They're presented as budget neutral. We spend what we bring in revenue from other non-local sources. And I think that's enough.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any board members that would like to comment in this public hearing on the budget?
I just have a question, Tim. I can see it, but can you tell me the difference between the default and the proposed budget?
This is Lil Mon.
Sorry, this is Lil Mon speaking. Board member.
The default budget is scheduled to be $50,463,877, and that's a difference of $630,993.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions or comments? Just in general terms, then I just wanted to comment that I think the board has worked very hard in collaboration with the district administration this year on the operating budget. I think it's as mean a budget as we could come up with. I think it's quite responsible. We didn't add any more personnel than we didn't add. Zero-based budgeting approach, I think, has been quite responsible. The overall impact on the tax rate is fairly minimal. People will see a larger impact due to the three collective bargaining agreements we're going to be asking voters to approve. That's not what this public hearing is about. Myself, indicate that I think that it's a fair, reasonable, and responsible budget. I think the board has done an excellent job. Are there any members of the public here present who would like to comment on this public hearing on the budget for 23? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to comment?
No one is indicating a desire to speak.
This public hearing on the budget is then closed. Excuse me. Second public hearing is on the proposed donation from Gail and John Wasson of $4,999 towards 11 high school common good program. The board has information about this program. It's in our packet. Also with public hard copies here as well as on the district website for the last several days that we can keep reaching. The board will be having a discussion and action item on the agenda later on. But if anyone would like to comment on this period, this would be a good time to do it. Anyone on Zoom? Comment?
Negative.
This public hearing is closed. The school board meeting is now called to order. Please turn in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As I mentioned, we will be having public comment in the meeting. We'll come to that in a couple minutes. Just as usual, this meeting is being recorded on Jack's TV. It will be available within a couple days to see. There's also Zoom. Wish to observe live, participate in the comment. Instructions for accessing this are on the district website. Additions or deletions from the agenda. I do have one. With the permission of the board, I would like to move item number 10, 10A and 10B. There's a discussion and action on school handbooks and programs of study, as well as on donation for Deletions common good. I would like to move that item to immediately after item 7, the student report. And this will be a little bit easier on our hardworking administrators who are here tonight to speak to us about either of those. So hearing no objection, we'll do that. We now come to the public comment period. Anyone who wishes to address the board on any matter of the agenda or applying to the school district in particular, please, this is your opportunity to do it. Please identify yourself by name and the ward in which you reside. I don't see anyone standing up in person. Tim, or is there anyone like Zoom?
No.
Public comment period is closed. Correspondence, Secretary,
There's none.
consent agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the non-public meetings from November 19th, 2022?
the public or the non? I didn't think we had any non. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the non-public minutes from November 19th, 2022.
Second that.
It's a motion by MJ, second by Stephen. Marco's in our packet.
I didn't see it.
I didn't see none.
All right, in that case, we will defer that to the next meeting. Motion, please, to approve the public meetings from the December 14th board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the public minutes from the December 14th, 2022 meeting.
Motion by MJ, second by Stephen. Is there any corrections or comments on the December 14th meeting minutes? I see people are glancing through the other pages a minute. Okay, any corrections or questions?
Hey, Dick,
Yes, sir.
for the, 5th paragraph down on page 3, starts out, a statement was made about not budgeting any building projects. It says the motion was approved, but there's no vote.
Okay. We'll need to make that correction. I'm sure we can get it. Anything else? Then we'll vote on the motion. All in favor? 6, 7, 8, 9. Vote is 9-0. Next item on the agenda, approval of nominations, renominations, retirements, applications. There are none. Move on to student report.
Good evening. Hi. Hi, I'm Alpha. I'm here on behalf of the LHS Council. Our biggest update of this month is our Wellness Week, which will be taking place after Midterms Week, and Midterms Week is next week. We are partnering with Dartmouth Health and All Together in the local community for the first time and bringing more mental health and substance abuse resources to students and staff. For the week itself, we will have bingo sheets to promote wellness activities such as digital detox, taking time to yourself, and hot chocolate and tea packets will also be funded and provided by council. We are going to make sure to have lots of connections to resources posted around the school. Thank you.
Questions? What's digital detox?
It's where you take time off from devices like your phone, your computer, and I guess TVs. So
I think
yes,
you're
of course.
already part of that, Dick. I think. So, I don't think you need any help with that. It's good.
I mean, we'd love any participation, so more than welcome.
How are people feeling going into midterms?
I think there's a lot of stress. Obviously, it's midterms, but I think teachers have really been helpful and really lenient with, they're really reasonable with the workload and obviously just reviewing everything we've done this year. So, at least for me, I'm not that stressed for midterms. So, it's going good.
I just was curious about the Wellness Week. How does that work with classes? Are you doing stuff during the day, or is it stuff kids do at home?
Yeah, so we try to encourage teachers to, lessen the workload a little bit. Obviously, some teachers can't do so if it's an AP class or, they're if it's AP class, then they can't really like take that much off, but we just try to like raise awareness towards like mental health and like even just promote like 5 minutes from the class and just dedicate that to like say meditation or I don't know, just talking about, you know, mental health. So it's not that rigid. So it normally happens in March, but this year we moved it up to January because March it gets too close to AP exams. So hopefully it will be more convenient for teachers to, you know, move around their course and, you know, at least dedicate a few minutes towards this. So we're hoping this year will be more of a success than it was last year.
I didn't know it was unsuccessful last year.
It wasn't. We're just.
Hello, there it is. Yeah, so we prepped the teachers at last week's staff meeting to be receptive to the idea that less homework should be given. And that's a constant refrain from us. We mentioned homework 3 or 4 times a year to our staff. We try not to make a habit of interfering with instructional practices of our teachers. We hire good people. We hope that they use discretion when it comes to giving homework. But that message was delivered, and we communicated that to council. Midterms are typically 10% of your semester grade. And so doing poorly won't have a terrible impact on your overall grade. We think it's good practice for kids to be subjected to, this much angst when it comes to preparing for midterms. But our kids typically do, math and chemistry are hard tests, they just are. And but typically our kids do well on midterms, and it's not an opportunity to fail, it's an opportunity to show what you know. And so I think we have a good balance, have struck a good balance with midterms and finals, and we appreciate Wellness Week for sure.
Last speaker was Mr. Smith, principal of Lebanon High School.
Have we seen, I don't think we've talked to council since Winterfest, did we? Because I think it happened after our last meeting.
I'm not sure. I was out of the country this month, the past month, so
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ian's coming back.
So real quickly, and I think I mentioned this maybe at EC, or I don't recall, but Winterfest I think was a success. I think we ended the day with a talent show. I think the culture of our school can often be, there's some insight into, how we operate as a building when we gather our whole student body together, and we have students who have put themselves in a position to perform, and regardless of their talent level, they are well received, they are cheered for, they are treated well. Every once in a while you need to go up and have kids refocus. But I think by and large, when we gather as a group, kids do a really nice job and support each other. So I think Winterfest was a fun day.
Yeah, I heard the town
no
show went
injuries.
really well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
We're now going to jump forward to item 10A on the agenda, discussion and action, approval of the Lebanon School, Elementary School, Lebanon Middle School, and High School Handbooks and Program of Studies. And I will let the administrators decide. Why don't we just do it in the order in which it's in our packet? I think Lebanon Middle School and Handbooks School are first. Do you want to deal with those both together, or what's the principal's?
I would like to, I'll let Hi, I'm Katie Roach. I'm the principal at Mount Lebanon School.
I'm Jack Finley. I'm the principal of Hammer Street School.
We do want to suggest a change in the handbook. On page 12, we had 2 paragraphs for enrichment, and we have deleted the second paragraph based on the Saturday, or actually it wasn't a Saturday, it was a Wednesday night budget meeting, and so we've deleted the second paragraph, but we just want to keep the first one in our handbooks. Any?
And that's what we're seeing now.
You're seeing in the board packet on changes to the Mount Lebanon, you see 2 paragraphs for enrichment. I'll tell you what page that's on.
It's on the back side of.
Let's talk about the packet.
Yeah. What page is that? What page is that?
It's not numbered, it's fine.
I don't know if it's in the packet, they're not numbered.
So you said you're deleting the second paragraph.
We're deleting the second paragraph based on the board's decision at the last school board meeting to wait until we were in agreement on enrichment. Is that fine? That was it? Okay. Questions?
So I thought, I mean, I read it quickly, but I thought the front page said the 22-23 year, and the one you're asking us to approve that was in the document, which I thought this was the 23-24.
It is the 23-24. It might have,
But I thought the link that was in our packet had 22-23.
it could have just been a typo on the top, but we were working on the 23-24 changes. What page is that?
No.
Oh, here.
And these are the suggested changes in the 23-24 handbook.
What begs the question?
I'm looking at it, I'm looking at what you're saying, MJ, and it says, like, regarding the handbook revisions, date December 9th, 2022. Is that what you're looking at?
No, it was the actual handbook that was in our packet, like the draft handbook, and
link
the
to
front
it.
of it said 22-23.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll switch that, yeah.
Yeah, they both do, so there's, you just need to fix it.
Is that what's showing up for you?
Uh-huh.
The old handbook?
Well, it says 22, 23, I
Yes,
don't know.
I'm wondering, is this the old handbook? Do we not even have?
Yeah, is the one that we looked at in our board packet actually matching the changes that are in the overview sheet?
We had an electronic link.
I don't have your electronic link right now, but I will look at
I'm
it.
forwarding it to you right now.
Thank you, Lil. And we will make sure it says the 23-24 one.
That is correct. We will change the dates. It does say 22-23 at the bottom. So that one has to get changed, and that's not reflected in there because it's a year change. So it probably is the correct link.
Still stuck on page 12. The paragraph that begins meeting the needs has been deleted.
So on page 12, correct, we added an enrichment paragraph.
Yeah.
And we are keeping the first paragraph, and we are deleting the second paragraph and the third line that says more information is provided in this document, and there would have been a link, and we
Okay.
are deleting that.
Okay, so that second paragraph is not there. Okay,
It's not it. All
okay,
right.
fine.
And that should be reflected in that document that you have.
On page 12.
Yeah, the one we have.
Yes.
Page 12, we have one.
Yes.
Great.
There we go.
All on the same page,
Thank
good
you.
job.
We got there. We got home. Any other questions regarding the handbooks?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything to be discussed on the middle school
Yep.
handbook?
So middle school
Is
now?
Mrs. McIntyre here?
Yeah.
There you are.
I have a question.
You have a question on the middle school?
I
or-
do.
Okay.
So, it's a,
And
Okay, go ahead,
is it
MJ.
the student handbook, staff handbook, or the program of studies?
well, I guess we can, the student handbook.
Student handbook, okay.
So it says there are no substantive changes, but I guess I would beg to differ under the backpack section that there is a substantive change. because I'm looking at my copy of the 22-23, and here it says, students may use backpack in the hallways to transition from class to class. And then in the draft that we saw for 23-24, the backpack paragraph is actually contradictory. It says in the beginning they can't use backpacks, they have to go to the lockers. But then the second sentence says, oh, you can use backpacks sometimes, and you can have a small backpack or a small purse. So it's kind of, well, which way are we going? I'll rely on one of my electronic friends over there to actually read the paragraph, but okay. I wasn't prepared with the paragraph.
All right, I can look at that and make sure that it is clear. We really prefer that students put their big backpacks in their locker, and then if they need something with them, to carry something smaller around.
Can we state it that way, though?
Yep,
Can we say that?
Okay, I will
That's
make that.
that we have a preference, that it's not necessarily.
No, because some students will have to carry, it depends on the student. Some might have to carry a full backpack, and then we would talk about that. Part of it is that big, heavy backpacks are not good for kids, right? It's bad for their back, their shoulders, that sort of thing, so we're discouraging them carrying all that weight. But I know that in the past, I've had students that have had medical issues that need, like, all their supplies. Okay, so I will fix that.
Yeah, it's on page 23. So, and it does say what, that's the page that MJ is pointing to.
Okay. All right, I'll highlight that and fix that.
Is there anything else on any of the middle school documents?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, MJ.
So I guess it was more of a fundamental question of protocol. So in there, I also saw there was a faculty handbook. And so are those things that are usually published, for the public, or are those just an internal document? Because I was actually surprised to read in there what the faculty responsibility was when a student had either a substantial change in grades towards the downward trend or had a substantial number of missing assignments, and their responsibility to contact the parents. And just wondering, as a parent, that was kind of news to me, because I definitely have never felt that there was any standards that teachers have been held to, either with regard to returning emails within 48 hours if a student had a failing grade and a parent was concerned, or if there were a substantial number of missing assignments. So is this something that parents are privy to, or where's their recourse if the faculty, I guess, isn't being held to those standards?
I do hold the faculty to those standards, and I think I was the only one that published it, so I wasn't sure.
Would you like me to actually speak about that just briefly?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I just wanted, I'm Karen Dubois, I'm the DDECIA. I just wanted to clarify that document is not public. It was included in error and it's been taken down at this time. So I apologize for that. Not sure exactly how that happened, but it's not part of the handbooks under consideration this evening.
But there is an expectation that teachers do communicate with parents when students are trending down. Yes.
Any other questions regarding the middle school handbook or program of studies? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to Lebanon High School. Would either Ian or Bonnie like to just kind of run through what you've given us?
So, Ian Smith, Lebanon High School. We have not, there were not substantive changes to either the athletic handbook or the parent-student handbook. We've had some over the years that we've communicated out. We are working, we expect to spend more time with council this semester on a progressive dress code that we can apply and feel comfortable doing, that serves our students well and in a non-punitive way. And so we have language in there that is a placeholder, and we've referenced where we sought that language out. Dress codes are tough and not our favorite thing to pursue, and we have some hard lines that we've drawn that we feel comfortable with, and I think we've explained those in the handbook. We have, I do want to mention, we had JCOM, which we talked about earlier in the fall. That is a oversight on my part. I did not include it. It is a group that is an established, accepted part of our co-curricular program. It needs to eventually find its feet, but that it will be included in the parent-student handbook tomorrow. The program of studies, we have a number of new courses that we've explained to EC. We're happy to answer questions on those. I don't believe there's any other really crucial language that we've included this year, other than some new courses.
Don't go away yet, even.
Yep.
There may be questions.
Not going far.
Are there questions on the handbook, the program of studies? I have a couple, but I'll wait for the other board members. No? The two last items on the program of studies, yearbook and string ensemble, are those are non-credit courses?
No, those are credit. Those are credit.
Yeah, they're both semester courses and earn 1/2 of a credit. We'll make sure it's included in the program of studies.
I guess I'm a little interested in how yearbook production is an academic course.
Well, all of the yearbook companies provide a curriculum along with the documentation. It includes a lot of design elements, photography, and just basic organization of a year-long look at the high school. It's been functioning as a club, but we're thinking that to capture an audience during first semester that puts a definite effort into it will maybe be more successful in keeping students involved. They tend to start early and drop out, and it ends up being 3 or 4 people that do the majority of the work.
You consider running it as an ELO?
Yes, we have run it as an ELO in the past. We're not sure it will run next year, but we thought we would give it a try. It's been a request for several years. And again, the question is, can students fit it into their schedule, and will they stay with it? So if it's only a handful of students, we won't run it.
We tried to build our technology class portfolio, or catalog, I should say, of classes that will interest kids. And it's a vibrant program, and this would be just another piece to that. And what ends up happening with yearbook, it becomes a tremendous responsibility for the advisors, and they get a decent stipend, but it's the amount of stress attached to that position. We've been on bended knee for 4 years trying to keep the person who does a wonderful job, Betsy Duaney, with help from Todd Matty, to continue to do it. We produce an awesome yearbook, but it really ends up being the work of staff and with a couple of kids, perhaps. I don't want to not recognize them, because there are some that are stalwarts and are there to the end, but it's a tough duty, and we want to keep it going. The expectation is, of course, that we produce one, and that takes a lot of work. So if we have sign-ups, we'll identify digital competencies attached to yearbook class and make sure that they're there, and we've talked about it. We think we can do that.
And the string ensemble class is really in partnership with the Upper Valley Music Center. We do have some of our students who are very accomplished string musicians, and we would like to recognize them within the school as well as in the community.
That's great.
It's important to note that these are not FTE increases, and there's no impact on the budget.
I wasn't concerned about that.
Some people might be.
That wasn't where I was going.
I know. I just want to get that out there.
Just while we're talking about yearbook, it will be one of the courses that meet the half-credit technology.
Yes, it will.
Course. Okay.
I just wanted to say, I did yearbook in high school, and it is a lot of work, and there are a lot of good skills that kids learn, so I'm actually really pleased to see that as like a real class, because I think it is basically an art class, design, marketing, all that kind of stuff.
Well,
so.
and with an authentic assessment at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
And do they get, so could you just enlighten us for string ensemble and yearbook, they would just get credit, right? Like pass, fail. Like if they do the work, then they pass.
I don't know if we've talked about that.
No, I think like chorus or band, they would receive a letter grade.
A letter grade, okay. Great, fantastic.
Anything else for Ian and or Bonnie?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry I was late. I was at the wrestling meet.
Brutal. Okay, so we now need a motion. I think we can do this as a single motion, since I didn't hear anything controversial. May I please have a motion then to approve the handbooks and programs of study for 23-24 for Mount Lebanon School, Hanover Street School, Lebanon Middle School, and Lebanon High School.
I'll make the motion to approve the handbooks and programs of studies for the Mount Lebanon School, Hanover Street School, Lebanon Middle School, and the Lebanon High School with the emendations that the principals brought up today. There's a couple of changes that they mentioned. So with those changes, move that we approve the handbooks.
Motion by Lil, second by Stephen.
Should we add 2023, 2024 to our motion?
Yeah.
Handbooks and programs of studies for 2023 and 2020 to 2024.
Any further discussion? All in favor? 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 10B, discussion and action on the acceptance of a donation of $4,999 from Gail and John Wasson towards the Lebanon High School Common Good. We have quite a bit of information in our packet about this, but I wonder if Ian or Bonnie would like to talk to us a little bit about this.
I have a question.
Sure, I'll just give a little bit of background. Gail and John Wasson have been great supporters of Lebanon High School. They have provided scholarships for our students to attend the summer experience at Kent in the past. COVID kind of interrupted that, but it was really life-changing for a few of our students. And John has a friend in Connecticut at the Hall School who has been having a common good program very similar to this for the last 5 or 6 years. And he wanted to step in and provide an opportunity for Lebanon High School students to learn more about philanthropy, again in an authentic way. And we decided that we would approach it as an ELO because there will be a lot of learning involved about money management and how you make decisions about it. And Gail Wasson has a great deal of experience with philanthropy and will be coming in as kind of a guest lecturer to work with our students who will have the power to make grants to groups within the school and outside of the school. And your question?
I just wanted to know why it was $4,999.
It was, if it was $1 more, it would have required a public hearing per the school board policy. We thought it would be
Well,
simple.
got a public hearing anyway.
Yes.
So you said you're going to run it as an ELO, so is it limited to a certain number of students that can do it, and so what number is it capped at that can do the ELO?
We are looking for student representation from all 4 grade levels and hoping for 2 to 3 per grade level, giving more of the responsibility to the upperclassmen, but of course this is a primer year, it's kind of a pilot program. They'll all be learning together, but we're kind of hoping we'll grow the kids along with the program and they'll stick with it. Interestingly, it's Ann Scharfstein who will run lead on the ELO if it's approved tonight, and her father graduated from Dartmouth with John Wasson. We didn't know that when we approached her.
And you said someone is making a decision about who gives these grants, so who gets the grant? So who's
Yeah,
making that decision?
The kids, the students
Which kids?
that are in this ELO about the common good.
And then they decide who gets the grant money?
Mm-hmm.
So then the grant money's not going back to these same students, it's going to different students?
It might go to different student groups. It's not for them. It's to support the common good.
Oh, I see. So the ELO is the students join on to help manage this?
Correct. They govern the money.
I see. Okay.
And the
That was-
program and figure out how they're going to advertise it and make their decisions and so forth.
Okay. I just didn't understand that. That makes more sense.
I don't think you're allowed to ask questions. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't, this is a good statement you said, because I don't think I understood that fully. When you say they govern the money, I guess what does that mean? So funds that are managed through our grants fund are always under the purview of the treasurer, who works for the school board. And so I was assuming that this would be a pot of money that maybe they run a spreadsheet or something on, that's fine. But, the money needs to flow through our financial system with the approval of the board through the treasurer. So I'm assuming that process, so they might say, pay this organization $300 or whatever, and that's fine. But in effect, the board has a final say by looking at the voucher. Am I off base, or was that what you're thinking too?
There will be final reporting provided at the end of the thing, but I wasn't thinking that each grant would be approved by the board. We were planning to run it through the athletic and co-curricular office funds.
Well, every payment that gets out of all $51 million gets approved effectively by the board, by two representatives who sign off on every expenditure, every payroll expenditure, everything. So in that way, they would see, every time we cut a check, they would see who it got cut to.
Great.
Are you okay with that?
100%, yeah.
Are you okay with that?
As long as it's running through our grant system,
Okay.
as long as it's running through our financial system, I'm
We'll
peachy keen
be
with it.
transparent about it. You can read about it in the weekly even.
Well, I wouldn't want anyone to get the impression that the board gives a thumbs up or thumbs down on monthly expenditures that appear on the vouchers. I mean, board representatives have a responsibility to review them and ask questions for clarification, but we don't come in and say, we're not sure. You need to justify spending $1,000 on a particular item, right? I mean, it goes through your system and we approve it.
Well,
Have you
maybe it's a
ever,
bigger discussion, because that's effectively, the board needs to have oversight in every dollar that's spent. And so I appreciate you not saying, why'd you buy 6 things of pencils or something, but it's effectively what you're doing, I guess, or that's the way you should approach it, is that, what are we spending money on? I don't want you to spend hours on it. God knows it brings things to me, but it's not, I don't expect you guys to just rubber stamp it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's all I was trying to get at, So before it goes out, we try to make sure there's nothing on there that we can't justify, because I'm not expecting a rubber stamp. I just wanted to make sure you knew it was going to run through our regular accounting channels.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Yep.
sorry.
So will the grants be to, so you said it could be outside agencies, but there also could be something that's happening within the school?
Correct.
Could it be something that's happening in any of the other schools, or are you limiting that to?
Yeah.
So like if they're an elementary, something needed a grant money, they could?
They could apply, absolutely.
Okay.
And then our students would need to consider
Evaluate it.
and all of that.
Yep.
I mean, it'll be a big learning curve, and this year they'll be inventing it as they're going along, so.
And is the idea that it will be like a 5,000 yearly fund, or
In Connecticut, the program received a lot of donations, and they are spending annually just the revenue from it. But we're just doing this as a pilot this year before we approach that as a possibility.
Yep.
They have a partnership with a foundation down there in Connecticut, but we're not going to jump that deep in yet. Yes, Tim.
I'm sorry, I know I'm not on the board, but because this is a pilot sort of thing, it seemed like we're trying to figure out how to make it look. If you know, I read the word endowment, and maybe we need to be clear on that. If this went to something where you were spending just the interest earned, that's a totally different ball of wax.
Correct.
And it would have to run through the trustees of trust funds and be invested in a way that it earns interest. As you might imagine, our operating budget funds, our operating accounts don't earn significant interest. So that'd be a different issue if you thought you were going to grow it to something like that.
Oh, I agree. And there would need to be a lot more work done on our part to figure out how that works, and then work with you to see if it's even possible.
Yeah.
Clarification question: what if the money is held outside of the school, and this is a fund that is that we get to participate in how it's allocated, but it's held by the Wassons separate from the school?
I mean, I suppose how I would want to talk to our auditors, but I think I'm right in saying how the Wassons want to spend their money is up to them. So if they want to have a board of kids that are deciding that to some extent, that's fine. As you know, Lebanon doesn't cut any checks, Lebanon doesn't do anything with the money, then I think that there's probably no issue. But I would want to double check that with our auditors.
So that's what I was wondering about, if it was
Please
indeed.
into the microphone, please. Sorry.
Is this on?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
There you
Okay.
go.
I was wondering about whether or not it was in fact an endowment, because usually an endowment means that there's some setback that you won't be spending. And then the other thing that I was curious about is there's all kinds of rules and decorums for boards, and so are the kids being will they understand that what they're engaged in is very much like a board for a business, or?
I think that that's a very strong possibility, that there would be a treasurer, there would be a secretary, they would follow Robert's rules and so forth. But in the beginning, the first goals are really about understanding the importance of philanthropy in the community, which is something that teenagers don't think about usually unless
Right.
you know, they have an opportunity like this.
Right. Or even know what an endowment is, for
Correct,
that matter.
yeah.
Okay.
So it could definitely grow in a lot of different directions, and we only have one semester. It would be starting 2 weeks from now, and so there would just be the spring semester this year as the pilot.
That was my question. So what is, if this gets approved, you've only got 2 weeks before the next semester happens, right?
Correct.
So this ELO, is it going to be advertised? I mean, how are you going to get this first group of people to be a part of it?
I have talked a little bit about Joy Gobin, our ELO coordinator, and Ann Scharfstein about that. And I think that it will be put out as anyone interested, let us know, and then we may have to go to a selection process from there, because we can't have a huge group. Yeah.
And is the goal in this one semester pilot project to spend all 49?
No, not at all. I mean, they might, but I don't think that that's realistic. But we don't know, you know, if they figure out how to put out a RFP, is that what you call it? Then maybe by April or May, they would get some applications. So it's going to be kind of truncated this year.
Quick question. So,
Wendy?
given that the schedules for the high school students are already out, would this have to be a group of kids that happen to have the same period open?
It's not a class. It's an
Okay.
ELO.
So when
So
do
they'll
they-
meet during academic block or after school, or however they can figure out when the kids are available.
Okay.
They might meet before school. It's highly unlikely that all of the students involved would have the same period off.
Okay.
Right. It would not be unusual for students to have release time from class to meet with the Wassons, you know, a couple, 3 different times during the semester to get the project up and running. That's something that we do, and when college admissions folks come to the counseling office, students get release time. So, you know, we'll be judicious with that, but we'll try to make it such that all would be available to participate during the school day.
I think Angus Hall is available.
Thinking a lot of seniors will be available second semester.
It's kind of an intriguing possibility.
We'll-
Yes,
we'll-
Tim?
Do you think that they would oppose changing that sentence to, in its pilot year, a fund will be run by Lebanon's
No, I
school,
wrote it,
something like
so
that?
there's no objection. I'm happy to make that
'Cause
change.
I think you're right. The word endowment means real things.
I know. Well, I was going back and forth about, do I dive all the way in, or do I try to hold it back? And I
But,
thought,
to your point and Ian's point, like if it grows into something bigger and endowment's the way to go, like the board could give that money back to them, or we could work out the mechanism to give the money back to an endowment that's separate from the district or something. But in the first year, if it's just a fund, then we don't have to worry about making money and board of directors and all that stuff.
absolutely no problem. I would think that the students might be interested in coming to report to you about how this goes later, so that will be interesting to if you approve it.
Yeah.
I think we'd like to see that, and that should be part of the motion, that you report back, say, before the end of the academic year. Would that be possible?
Yeah.
If they have the kids come in? Great.
It would also be fun to have Gail and John come. And,
Yes,
and,
I'm wondering if they're watching.
I'll probably find out tomorrow.
Which is a good segue, Wendy. I just want to thank, and Donna, you already have, but Gail and John, with their time and resources for this project, but also they've been partners with us at the high school for 4 or 5 years now. And these are folks that don't have to do this and have sought us out and have initiated contact with us to help give kids who might not have an experience like this when they were off to the Kent school during the summer that they wouldn't otherwise have. And so they've been persistent. They have shown up for presentations. They are appreciative of the work that the kids have done, and they've been great. So I just want to say that publicly.
And they also help support the Upper Valley Rowing Foundation.
Yes, he
and
does.
providing some of the boats that our students row in.
Yeah.
I think it's time for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to accept the proposed donation from Gail and John Wasson for $4,999 towards the LHS Common Good Fund, I guess we're calling it, with the understanding that the first pilot program will report back to us before the end of the school year.
Second that.
Motion by Lil, second by Stephen. Further discussion, questions?
No, I think it's great. I think that's really, I really am, I think it's an interesting proposal, and I think it's a really interesting set of skills that the kids can learn that are real world skills that, like Lisa pointed out, that we don't often engage with at that level with kids, and I think that's a great opportunity. So I'm encouraging kids to sign up.
Call the question. All in favor? 9-0, unanimous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Business Administrator update, which is discussion and action on the 2023 warrant articles. Tim, do you want to walk us through this? And
Sure.
Let us know what votes are required and when.
Sure. So first, the one in your packet there's not a lot of difference between one in the packet and one I handed out, but we should go to the one I handed out because there's something to discuss, I guess, as far as another article or series of articles at the end. Dick reminded Joanne that we were kind of throwing around a few weeks ago. It took me a while to find the language for it, so I didn't get it in the packet. So there's, I guess what we need to do tonight is we need to agree, you guys need to vote these articles onto the warrant, and then that vote will get, except for Article 1, that vote will get tabulated at the end of the article. That was the voters made that so a few years ago, where every warrant article will have the school board vote on it. And then, so we need to record the vote of each article, and then usually what we do tonight is people start volunteering as to what they're going to cover at the deliberative session. They don't, I'll let Dick handle that as far as what it looks like. So Article 1 is the election of officials. Goes on the warrant, but this is obviously what you vote on separately. And what I'm asking tonight, and in the next couple, I guess I should go over the time frame. So this warrant has to be posted with the budget and the deliberative and the default budget. There's 3 documents that get posted at various places around town. It has to be posted by the 30th of January. So the process will be, hopefully we're just about done with this tonight, except for the discussion about this last article. I will go back and I'll put all the tallies in there. And then we usually send it around on PandaDoc for your digital signature, and then we vote on it. Because it's the 30th, theoretically we have one more board meeting, but we usually try to wrap it up tonight. So Article 1, election of officials. Oh, so when you're looking at this, if there's something you see that doesn't seem right or a mistake I made on grammar, you can catch it tonight or you can catch it in the next couple of days. That's fine. That's what I'm trying to say. To elect 3 members of the school board, each for a 3-year term, and to elect 1 member to a 2-year term. To elect a school district clerk, a school district treasurer, and a school district moderator, each for a 1-year term. Trying to say there is that there's many positions up. There are 3 full terms up, and there's 1 term that fills out. Wendy's filling for this year. That position is also up. So there's 4 positions open, and when you are running for the board, from what I understand, you actually declare if you're running for a 3-year term or that 2-year term. So that's what that's for. Any questions about that?
So Tim, just for the language, it looks like we use 4 before. So we used 4 a 3-year term, 2 a 2-year term, and then again at the end for a 1-year term.
I failed English class. Not really, but you're right. That's a good catch. So what do you want it to say? Each for a 3-year term, to elect 1 member for a 2-year term, or?
Yeah.
That's the only change.
Sound good?
Yeah.
I don't think we need to vote on that. That goes on there no matter what.
Say what, Tim?
I don't think we need to vote on that because.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to read that? Volunteers at the deliberative session? Aaron.
Aaron took the tough one.
Thank you. Article 2.
This is the operating budget. It always goes first except for a bond, and there's no bond this year. To see if the school district will raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately. The amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session. The first session is a deliberative session. For the purposes set forth therein, totaling $51,094,870. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $50,463,877, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Lebanon School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold 1 special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Majority of what required means that the voters, it only passes if there's a majority, and then the school board recommends this article by whatever vote.
Any questions about this? Okay, I think we'll do this in turn. May I have a motion to approve Article 1, please? Article 2, sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 2, operating budget, as written.
Motion by Lil, second by Stephen. Any further questions? Okay. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9-0. Wasn't the budget vote different?
Yeah, it was.
Yes, so all we're doing is, so I was the one no, but all we're doing tonight is approving, so we passed the budget, and we're just approving, moving this the way it's written to the formal.
Well, we've been through this before, Wendy, as you know, and
what's that?
In this case, it doesn't really matter whether we say it was 9-0 or 8-1. But when these things do show a divergence, I've always argued that it's disingenuous to imply some sort of unanimity on the part of the board, saying, well, we're not really approving this, we're just approving the language of the warrant article.
I can do it either way, Dick. It does not matter to me.
In the past, our lawyer has indicated that the vote tonight is what goes on the warrant.
Yeah.
And what we're voting on tonight is the language of we've already had the vote on the budget.
But 8-1 is not going to, if this is 9-0, as we just said, 9-0 is going on the warrant.
She understands that.
I understand that.
Yeah. I can say in parentheses, at the budget meeting, someone is really.
Okay, so that will read
However you would like to do it. I can vote no, I can vote yes.
Well, I mean, personally, I agree that we should go with, and maybe you have changed your mind and you do fully support the budget now since the last meeting, in which case I think that's fine, but I think the intent should be that we should be voting on whether or not we support the budget as written and not the language per se
Well, I'm
that's in here.
supporting the vote of the board, the action of the board taken at the budget meeting. So however you would prefer me to do it.
Well, the vote's already been taken.
Great.
Okay, so we'll record it. It's going to record as 9-0. Chair's prerogative, I'm going to read this one. Article 3.
Now, after the operating budget, they can go essentially in any order. So.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yes.
So when we were agreeing to the collective bargaining agreements and stuff like that, so just following Dick's line of thought, if people were not here and I don't remember, but if people were not here and approved those things, should they not vote for this tonight?
Yeah, that's a good question.
My logic would dictate, yes, you're right, but I don't remember what those votes were.
Right.
We could look them up, I suppose. Where does anyone, well,
But does that matter? I mean, you could still support it now. I mean, you could still support even if you weren't there for the official vote that went through on the meeting.
Right, I think the intent right now should be, do you support the collective bargaining agreement tonight? Do you support the budget as written tonight? And that should be it. We shouldn't be splitting the hair of the legalese language that's written on the warrant article. It should be, in general, do you support the collective bargaining agreement? If yes, vote yes. If no, vote no.
It is conceivable that someone may have changed their mind over the months that have ensued since that original vote.
Right.
So I think it's as of today, does each board member support each of these articles?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so could we have a motion on Article 3?
I'll make a motion to support Article 3, Lebanon Support Staff Collective Bargaining Amendment, bargaining agreement as written.
I'll second it. Mary.
Motion by MJ, second by Mary. Any further discussion? All in favor? 9-0.
I'm happy to present that one.
Thank you, Stephen. Article 4. And that's the LAG group collective bargaining agreement, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
You're missing the school board recommends this article by a vote of.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Actually, that's the case for 5 as well, as long as we're proofreading.
Yeah, could I just say that Article 3, has different language, so I don't know if you want to standardize that, because it says the article is recommended by the board. It would be nice if they all read, the school board recommends the article.
Yeah.
Which one do you prefer?
So Article 2, she said, has a different sentence about the board than Article 3. So just make that sentence
do it
uniform.
like Article 2, not
Right.
like Article 3.
Language from Article 2, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion then on Article 4.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 4, Lebanon Administrative Group Collective Bargaining Amendment Agreement as written.
You really want to amend it, don't you?
Well, they are amending a contract, right?
Okay, motion by MJ,
Mary will second.
second by Steph, I'm sorry.
Doesn't matter.
Second by Mary.
What?
Further discussion?
And Tim, you see where it says recommendations required?
Right.
Take that out.
Yes, that, the standard from the DRA says recommendations required, and if you're noticing it, you're supposed to take that out and put the right real words in, but I missed
So
it.
you just keep putting in the school board recommends.
Right,
blah, blah, blah,
correct.
blah, blah. Yeah.
Right.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 in favor, opposed, abstention, 1.
I'll read it if you want.
Who's?
I said MJ will read it,
MJ will
but I'll have
read
to practice amendment versus agreement.
Please. Article 5 is the Lebanon Administrative Assistants Association Collective Bargaining Agreement. Looks like that also needs a little editing. Tim
Yeah, I see that.
filling in the blanks.
Sorry about that.
And the R in the school board recommends should be lowercase, not upper.
They really recommend it.
Then it should be all caps.
Emphatically.
Bold print.
Good catches, thank you.
Have a motion, please, on Article 5.
Well, I'll try to do it this time. Make a motion to approve Article 5, Lebanon Administrative Assistants Association Collective Bargaining Agreement as written.
Motion by MJ, second by Stephen.
And we have to replace the governing body and the union.
Yeah, maybe say, instead of as written, say with recommended edits or something.
With recommended edits. I trust you.
Anything further? All in favor? 9-0.
Who seconded that one? I'm sorry.
Steve.
That was Stephen. All right, who wants to read this one? Oh, come on, don't be shy.
What, the motion?
At the,
No,
you mean at
at
the,
at the deliberative session. Let's spread the wealth around. Lil will do it. Thank you. Article 6, add funds to the Lebanon School District Construction Capital Reserve Fund.
So this is, as you know, is on a warrant every year. The dollar amount is certainly completely your choice. I left it at $600,000. You'll see that the first $1 million offsets the tax rate. And then if there's $600,000 left, basically if there's less than $600,000, DRA will fund it up to whatever's left. So, but you can make that lower. We can make that.
could you say that again? If it's less than 600,000, then what happens?
So if the voters authorized $600,000, but we already set $1 million set aside. So we finished the books. There's $1 million set aside, and there's $582,000. The DRA is going to say you can't do 600. You're going to do 582. So.
Okay. So meaning we can add in, I mean, if this is approved, 600 would be the cap of what would go into this fund.
Correct.
But
And we could change it
have
to up
less
to,
than that-
if you're more comfortable with the words up to, we can change the of to up to, I think. But
But it
we've always,
wouldn't disallow you from putting that 582,000 in if that's all we had left over, right?
correct.
Correct. Then that's fine.
And where does the number 600 come from historically? Because it seems like that's been a number you've used.
So that's a good question. It's just out of my warped mind. You know, we've done 300 and 300 or 500 in some years. No, I say between the two. We've often had a special ed reserve fund on here too that we took off last year because it's really well funded. It's about $1.5 million. So the previous year it was 300 for each one. So last year when we took that off, we combined them to 600,000. That was the math behind it. This year I left it at 600 because it seemed like a good number. It wasn't overly ambitious, but it wasn't too small. But there's not any scientific, more scientific than that. But that's how 300 and 300 became 600.
Is there any reason, because of just our expenditures over the last year on special projects, whether it was the track all the things that we've used that capital reserve fund for that have depleted that fund, is there any reason to think about maybe trying to add more to the fund, picking a number like 700? Because we've depleted it.
It's a good argument.
I mean, I was going to raise the same issue because I'm a little worried about how small the capital reserve fund is at the moment. So obviously we don't know how much money we're going to have, and the first $1 million goes away anyway. So I don't think there would be anything wrong with increasing it a little bit just in case we have that cushion. I don't know.
And if we don't end up with that amount, it's
Doesn't
up
matter
to that.
anyway.
So if there's less, there's less.
Right.
I think the
I think the-
I
go
think
ahead,
the
Aaron.
I think
I
the
think we're gonna
bigger
say
you
the
make
same
this
thing.
number, the more it's going to scare taxpayers, thinking that we're raising money to put it in this fund when we already have all this other money spent. So I think we'd be better off keeping it where it is.
I tend to agree with Aaron. I mean, it's a matter of making a guess as to what the voters are going to say. I would be a little bit nervous because if they turn it down, then we don't get to put anything away. Go ahead,
Right.
Wendy. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
One, just for clarification, do we have a motion and a,
Not yet.
so should we do that before we continue discussion?
Sure, you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept Article 6 as written.
Motion by Wendy, second
With
by...
edits.
Second by Aaron. Okay, now let's continue the discussion.
I think the other piece is, I mean, I agree that I think putting more money in would be better, but I think during budget time, we also cut some projects out. And so if we've got other funds, we probably should use it for some of those end-of-year projects too. Or have it available.
Well, can I just ask, following on that, like, obviously we'll get the info at the very end of the year about what is left over. And then is there any stipulation at that point, like say there's a lot left over? And there are some, is there anything prohibiting us from sticking some of that additional money in the capital reserve fund at the end of the year? Is that not allowed?
That is not allowed.
Okay.
The board can, because your agents to expend, you can withdraw money from the cap reserve fund with a public hearing. But the only way to put money into the cap reserve fund, we've debated this, we found this out last year. The only way to put money in is to have the voters authorized to be put in.
So following along that theme, if we switch to the language up to, if we raise the amount but switch to the language up to, could you then have some leeway if you decided you put in the 600,000, there's an extra 100,000 for year-end funds that you may, special projects that you may or may not want to use, but now you have the flexibility to dump it into the capital reserve fund?
It can't go into the cap reserve fund except with a vote.
No, that's what I'm saying. If it says up to, so if it says up to instead of the hard stop, and you have extra money left over in your year-end funds that you decide not to do a project, and you haven't reached the cap yet, can you then put it in the capital reserve fund?
No. Well, we could put up, if he says up to $1 million, you could put $1 million in the cap reserve fund, yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Or whatever the number is.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Tim, my understanding was, like, the way that we use that end-of-year funds is for bills that, like, we can't hold on to it. We can't put it in the capital reserve funds. But if we're not going to get the bill for the track until around that time, if we had additional funds, we could use that money to pay for the track, leaving the capital reserve accounts alone.
The board authorized the track to be paid for out of cap reserve fund minus whatever donation came in. So no, you would, so I'm planning on having a public hearing. Once we know the donation number is from the track this spring, you are going to see a public hearing to withdraw X dollars from the cap reserve fund for the track. To basically, we've paid the track bills out of the general fund. We're going to reimburse the general fund. So and now you're asking about the mechanism to say we want to change that vote to something else. I don't know.
No, I didn't know, and so I guess it's along that same lines with the the Mount Leb School, we're using some of the capital reserve fund to finish that project. Is that, so does the same thing with the track hold true for that? So like we have to use the capital reserve, like we couldn't use end of year funds instead of capital reserve funds? Because of the way that the vote or the motion was?
I suppose.
And you can,
At the,
I don't know. Smell wood burning? I'm thinking. I mean, so you authorized a certain dollar amount towards the Mount Lab project with 3 different pots of money. You got ESSER funds, you got end of year funds from last year, and you have capital reserve funds. And so we're not going to exceed those 3 numbers, but could you take more out of this end of year and less out of cap reserve? I mean, I guess that the argument does hold true to the track. I suppose you could authorize. I guess I need to check with the council. So listen, you guys made a motion to take this out of cap reserve fund. Now you want to take less out of cap reserve fund. Can we just do that, or do we need to have a motion of the board? I guess I can't answer that without really sorting it through in my head and talking to Jim.
so
to be honest with you.
should we table Article 6 until?
I don't know why those are necessarily connected. Right?
at the risk of sounding realistic, I would say if you look at historically and Tim's latest batch of numbers, whatever the unexpended fund balance turns out to be at the end of the year, by the time we take out the first $1 million to give back to the taxpayers against next year's tax bill, and whatever number we say, whether it's 600 or 700 to capital reserve, we're probably only talking about $200,000 or $300,000.
Except for we've typically had 300,000 for the special ed fund.
Yeah.
And then we've still had a couple $100,000.
Right. Right. All I'm saying is the couple $100,000 is not going to make a significant difference to either the Mount Leb project or
No, but if we have 300,000, that because we're not doing the special ed fund, do you know what I'm saying? Like we don't typically
Yeah, well, that's why Tim bumped up
Right.
this to 600.
The last time we did both funds, we did 300 and 300 to each.
Right.
So this got doubled because we didn't
Oh.
put any money into the special ed fund. I mean, Dick has a good point. So last year, if you look at the trend, usually it's 1.2 that goes back to the taxpayers, but between 1.2 and 1.4. So remember the first $1 million, and then we fund it, and then the rest goes back to the taxpayers. So you're playing in the realm of $200,000. So it's not.
but 200,000
Huge.
staying in the capital reserve funds would be better than none. Anyway.
Although maybe we should, listening to everybody's comments, maybe we should just go with the 600 because we did that last year. And if we're lucky enough to have 200,000 or 300,000 at the end of the year, then maybe we could, relook at that pretty long list of projects that need to be done for the schools. So, there's nothing stopping that extra end-of-year money to pay whatever we need to for facilities.
Correct. We maintain a list. There are 2 things on the list that the board has told us to do already that either we call it end-of-year funds or I fund it and then go to you with end-of-year funds. But we have to take down the shed, the maintenance garage, and we have to pay for the boiler design, or at least maybe that hasn't been approved by F&F yet, but that's on it. So my point is that, we're already looking at somewhere near $100,000 of stuff that it's going to be on the list or whatever. So that's the kind of stuff that can be done with end-of-year funds if we think we have enough money for these 2 things. Something like the maintenance shed, you could take out a cap reserve fund, or you can just take it out end of year before you even talk about it. So I like the $600,000 number because I thought it was a good, comfortable number that we're realistically going to hit. I'd love to go bigger, but I get scared with bigger numbers.
Yeah, I like the 600,000 because it's been approved before, and we have a history of taxpayers approving that amount.
Can we talk about the language of this really quickly, Tim?
Yes, I know I already missed the 2022. We're supposed to say 2023. I don't know if you noticed that.
In addition, so that the middle sentence, this sum to come from, you need to say the June 30th fund balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the parentheses, the first $100,000 of the June 30th, and I don't understand why we have these capital unassigned fund balances. We can just keep them not capitalized.
No, that's a real term, accounting term.
So then we should capitalize it in the first place. So they have to
Sounds
be
good.
consistent either way.
I think they both need to be capitalized.
Okay. And if it is the same, then put the unassigned fund balance in that first sentence, right, after the first June 30th. So this sum to come from the June 30th unassigned fund balance, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Well, I think available for transfer on June.
Yeah,
July 1st means unassigned, correct?
Actually, I think from an accounting sort of weenie standpoint, those are different things. So you have all the money that's available is the fund balance, and that's available for transfer. And then the unassigned fund balance is one of the 5 kind of fund balances that are part of the accounting, in the Hampshire accounting system. So I know it seems odd, but
No, if they're
they're
separate,
different
that's
things.
fine. I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
if they're separate, let's make sure that they're separate.
Yep.
Okay, great.
But so the fund balance after June 30th would not be capitalized, but the UFB after that would be, because that's a real
That makes
place to put money.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so the motion then is to accept Article 6 as written with the editorial comments we've just made.
Who made that motion, sir?
That was
Wendy,
made
I think.
by Wendy and seconded by Aaron.
Okay.
So let's take a vote. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Unanimous. Thank you. Who would like to read this one at the deliberative session?
I can read it.
Kristen. Thank you. Okay, we have another one, which Tim handed out on a separate sheet of paper, which would be Article 7, authorize a special meeting to vote on a collective bargaining agreement. And this one may have to be put off, but let's talk about it, what we have so far already. Tim, do you want to talk about it, or shall I?
So Richard had brought up, what if, is there a mechanism if the CBAs have been canceled? And I did some digging, and there is. And then Jim authorized this language today. The only thing, the unknown is, I'm making an assumption that you have to do one of these articles for each of the CBAs, but I don't have that confirmed by our attorney yet. So this, if you have an Article 7, as is written here, if Article 3 goes, is voted no, without this article, it's a no, and there's no raise to, in this case, the LSS. If you put this article in, then the board can have another meeting to vote just on Article 3. The question is, do you want to do that, and B, I need to find the mechanism out or confirm the mechanism from our attorney if you need 3 different articles, one for each of the CBA articles, or can they be combined somehow?
I'm just confused what happens at that special meeting.
Yeah.
So the board, if voters don't approve that contract, we can call a special meeting where the board votes on it again?
No.
I think what would happen, Steve, that's a good point. I think what would happen would be we would reopen negotiations with the union and come up with a different contract, and then call a special meeting to get the voters to approve it.
And the special meeting would be like our deliberative session, and that whoever's there is voting?
That's my
At the
understanding.
meeting?
That's my understanding.
Well, a special meeting certainly means a vote of the public. I don't know if it's a deliberative session or because we're SB2, it's,
I mean, run the same way as like there's
Right.
a vote and people can talk and all that.
And
Right.
this is important because the problem we've run into in the past, when a negotiated agreement has been voted down by the voters, is that the the teachers or the parents or whoever belongs to that union just loses that year. You know, you wind up going back and negotiating a contract over the course of the next year and bringing it to the voters not until the next election cycle. And if that passes, then this is hanging around like an albatross, hanging around our neck over and over again, because whoever is involved is going to come back and say, you know, we lost a year on all of our steps. We didn't get what we were entitled to, and so you wind up. I remember with one of these unions, we had to negotiate over that repeatedly to try to recover that year's salary increase that was lost because the voters turned it down. So it would just be good looking forward to have a mechanism to try to rectify the situation without waiting a whole year. And that's why I asked them to look into this.
So then are we thinking that we want to set a precedence that anytime there's a CBA on our warrant article that we'd also have one of these? Is that your...
I would think so, Mindy, yeah. I mean, I think that would only be wise. I am told, I don't know whether it was Jim O'Shaughnessy or someone said that other districts do this, and so it's not unprecedented.
So I would say a question for Jim when you are running this through him is if it's possible to make the language such that it applies to all the collective bargaining agreements and not each individual one, because I think that's going to be overwhelming to voters, and it's all the same, right? So if any one of the warrant articles referring to collective bargaining agreements fails, blah, 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 because I think it's going to just be super confusing the more there are.
That's a great outstanding question.
And the other piece of that is it says the governing body to call one special meeting. So if we had 3 that failed or 2, would we need separate meetings for all of that, or are we going to try to handle?
Well, that's another reason to try to lump them together. Say, you know, if warrant articles 3, 4, and
but that's
3
a good question.
or 4 or 5.
That's a good question for Jim, because we don't know if they're required to have a special meeting per one, right? So that's the other question is, do we need 3 separate meetings, assuming, let's say 3 failed? Would we need 3 separate meetings, or can we kill it with all of one meeting and all in one warrant article?
And would those meetings be allowed to be public, like a public meeting, because it's salary stuff, or would they have to be special, like?
No, I think this is a meeting of the voters.
Yeah.
They'd have to.
Oh, this would be public with voters?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Negotiations would happen still the way that they happen.
Okay.
And then
in advance of that.
And then you'd have the opportunity to vote.
Oh, okay.
You'd bring the voting body back together.
I see.
On that.
All right, I didn't understand.
Oh, and another question for him. Is there a time limit? So is there, because we're talking about a school year that starts at a specific time with these collective bargaining agreements start at a specific time, would we need to then have these meetings? So that would limit what our negotiation time is if we need to renegotiate or whatever. Is there a time limit on these things because it's a time-sensitive agreement?
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
And would it have to require a renegotiation of the contract?
Well, if you don't
What do you propose? They just come back?
What are you presenting to voters at this special meeting?
Right. Same thing.
It's just the same thing. So I would imagine you have to reopen negotiations.
Well, I suppose the cynical approach, I'm not suggesting that's what you're saying.
No, I'm just.
What would be, well, let's call a special meeting and hope the right number of people show up to pass it. I don't think that's the intent.
But reopening negotiations before a special meeting sounds like like you would need a long time frame.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just do it by the end of the school year.
Well, that's why Lou's question needs to be addressed. I mean, it could be that it's going to overlap, and they'll do without the increase for the first couple months of the school year. Right. In which case, we're going to be wrapping that into any new CBA saying, you know, they're going to get an extra pay. It's going to be retroactive or something like that. So, my sense is we probably won't entertain a motion right now because of these questions that need to be addressed. what's our time frame, Tim? Can we do this
I guess,
by our next January meeting?
or we have to.
Can we
But
do it, can we do it at our next January
we
meeting?
can. I was wondering if you like the idea with stipulations, like if it can be put into one, then we want it on there, and then I could find that out. Or if you're not comfortable with that, then we can wait. But that's what I was thinking, that it, if you supported this, but only if it was covering all three in one article, then put it on there. But
Chair, I'll defer to whatever the board wants to do. I think if we have the time to wait until the next board meeting, I think I'd rather do that than have some sort of wishy-washy motion now that has all sorts of contingencies in it.
I agree. I think it's going to be too many contingencies because I think whether or not we support, I think we all support it, and I think we would support it if it was 3, and we would support it if it was 1 warrant article, but we just would like to know legally what it has to be, right? So, I mean, I don't.
okay. I guess my question was going to be, do you support it? So what is to play devil's advocate, if we've never done this before and now you are, is it presenting the idea that you're worried it's not going to pass? I don't know. That's a philosophical question.
And my ask or response to that is not to ask your question, but another question is, it seems like this is a good opportunity for us to think about when we put out this annual report, right, that is going to go before, people are going to read these things before the deliberative session, right? The sort of, we put out a document that people read.
Well, it's a good question. The annual report is required by law to be put out after the deliberative session, and the idea behind that is at the deliberative session, people can change the budget if they want. We have typically, until last year, we put it out before.
Right.
If we don't approve a warrant article tonight, we certainly cannot put it out before, because the annual report has to go to the printer, and it's, January 30th is the date to post this. That's 5 days before the deliberative session. There's no way in the world.
Right, so then if that's the case, then do we need to put out something else, not an annual report, but a one-pager that explains, it's like PR, right? Like, this is what we did. These are the great things that the concessions, I mean, if we're worried that people aren't going to pass it, people need to know why we support it, right? Like, if we're, and I don't know if we're worried that people aren't going to pass it, but I think it would behoove us to explain why we support it.
So the time to do that is between the deliberative session and the March vote. So that's when it's, the voters have spoken at the first meeting, the deliberative session, this is what it is, and now they have 6 weeks to learn why they need to vote for it in March.
So then that would be included in the annual report?
Correct. So the annual report would come out after the deliberative session.
So in policy meeting, Joanne was speaking about like communication as a board goal, and the idea that the board could make us put some kind of statement in the annual report. And so in that statement, seems like that would be a good place to.
I asked about that, and Joanne told me that the annual report is basically already paginated and ready to go. And it's an open question if there's room for a letter from the board in there at all.
Well, it seemed like
Maybe
that's what she was suggesting.
Yeah, I know. I think she was, I'm not sure that she meant this year or not, because I asked her about that afterwards. And there's some question as to whether or not any changes could be made that would result in the adding of additional pages. We can check into that. But here's a thought on this one. Why don't we vote what we would like to, how we would like this to read, which my understanding, listening to the conversation, is to include Articles 3, 4, and 5 and approve it. And if it turns out it's okay, we're done. If it turns out that legally we can't do that, then Tim can bring it back to the next board meeting and we can do this conversation over again.
That's a great idea.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. You want to make the motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve Article 7 to authorize a special meeting to vote on a collective bargaining agreement with further advice from legal counsel about how that special meeting would take place. I don't know. What do you need in the motion?
I think actually what we need is a motion to approve Article 7 to read, shall the school district, if warrant articles 3, 4,
okay.
and 5 are defeated.
All right.
Or
All right,
five.
then let me
3, 4,
rephrase.
or 5, yeah.
And or, is it and or 5? I mean,
And or.
because it could be any combination of them, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes, so, and make a motion to approve Article 7, to read that the school, shall the school district, if warrant articles 3, 4, or 5
And
Are defeated.
are defeated, or is defeated, sorry, to authorize the governing body, is that us? To
Yeah.
call one special meeting at its option to address the cost items only.
so we also would want to be careful about the wording of the title so that it doesn't look like a singular collective bargaining agreement.
So the title is purely written by the business administrator, so
Yep.
I didn't really know how to title it, so
Well,
I
shouldn't it be just
I
a
recommend
S
that
in
too.
parentheses? Because again, it could be 1 or 2 or 3 that fail, so.
Yeah, so take out the A, to authorize a special meeting to vote on collective bargaining agreements, S in parentheses at the end.
Okay.
And then just what Kristen was saying, so at the very end of that sentence, at its option to address, and I don't even know if you need to say, you can ask Jim, I don't even know if you need to say warrant article cost items, but you can say like pertinent cost items, whatever it is, right? Because we don't know how many warrant articles there will be, or affected cost items, or something else, because I think you don't have to restate that it's warrant article 3, 4, or 5.
Well, couldn't you say the defeated warrant article,
Could say that.
cost items only? Because I think, right, that my interpretation of cost items only is that they can't
Yeah, it needs
kind
to
of
be cost
reopen
items
the
only.
language
Right, it has to be cost
interpretations.
items only.
Right, so I think you need to still have the cost items in there, but.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Tim, I wonder if you can say something like, shall the school district, if any warrant article related to collective bargaining agreement hyphen, or in parentheses S, is defeated, because we,
Well, I know that the canned language specifically said warrant article and the number of it. I know the DRA likes things to be pointed
Okay.
clearly, so.
That's good.
I think warrant articles 3, 4, or 5 is defeated, et cetera. I think it's good.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
so everyone's comfortable with the language?
Do we have a second for this, or we just?
Sure.
Yes. So motion by Kristen, second by Stephen. All in favor? 9-0. Thank you.
Do you have someone reading this one?
Who haven't we picked on yet?
Lisa,
Mary.
Lisa and Mary.
I was trying not to look at you, Mary.
So, Dick, if you allow me,
I don't
just,
think we have all the readers, Tim.
Tim, can I ask just one question? Because this doesn't have a specific dollar amount to it, do we need to have the recommended votes?
not by law, but because the district voted to put it on every warrant article, it has to go on every warrant article.
Okay. And so then how is the election of officials different? Just because that's mandatory?
Number one.
It's, yeah,
It's not a warrant article the board controls, per se.
Right.
We didn't vote to put it in.
So, to reiterate, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm going to craft this with the language we talked about, and if the lawyer says, sounds good, we're good to go, and you'll see it coming around. If the lawyer says, no, you got to do separate ones, then we'll have to reopen things next meeting, right?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Tim, do you have anything else for business administrator update report?
I'm tired now.
Tired? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Unfinished business.
We have policies.
I think.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we have only one policy for a second read. The reason for that will be addressed in the policy committee report. So it's JLCJA, second read. Get things started, may I have a motion to approve JLCJA?
I'll make a motion to approve policy JLCJA. It's like emergency plan for sports-related injuries and additional protocols for athletics participation.
Motion by MJ, second by Stephen. You may recall this was a mandated policy. It's a new mandated policy. And when we did the first read, I do not recall any changes being asked for.
No, there were just some grammar things that I submitted those. They just haven't been changed yet.
Did you want to pass those along again then if they,
Okay.
if they
Yeah.
haven't been changed?
I'll do them again.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, any further discussion on JLCJA? Okay, all in favor? 9-0. Policy is accepted. Now we need a motion to accept the donation of $4,999.
Dick, we
Yes.
have policy JLCJ in our packet, B, 9B.
Oh, yikes. Sorry, Wendy.
No worries.
I saw those as the same. Is that in the packet?
Yeah. It's about concussions.
Oh, okay, it's in the wrong. J, okay. Concussion and head injury, right, okay, get things started, please motion to approve, accept and approve JLCJ.
I'll do it. I would like to make a motion to approve policy JLCJ, concussions and head injuries.
Second.
By Kristen, second by MJ. Again, this was a mandated policy. It was a revision. And I don't believe, aside from any grammatical corrections, which may or may not have been made.
They have not. I'll send them again.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this policy? Okay. All in favor? 9-0. Sorry for overlooking that. Okay, that's the unfinished business. New business, we've already done the handbooks and programs of study. We need to have a motion to accept the donation of $4,999 from Gail and John Wasson towards the Lebanon High School Common Good program.
I'll make a motion to accept the donation of $4,990 from Gail and John Wasson towards the LHS Common Good.
Motion by Wendy, second by, who was first?
Mary, just raise your hand.
By Mary. Any further discussion beyond grateful thanks to the Wassons for this, instituting this program? Okay, all in favor? 9-0. Committee updates. Finance and Facilities met Thursday, December 15th. Is there anything to report out?
We talked about the Mount Leb and the Hanover Street and high school renovations. Not much different than what we talked about on our last board meeting. We got a review of the roof replacement plan, going over each roof and how they are broken up. We talked about the SAU office boiler upgrade possibility, which will be brought to the board at some point. And then we set our next date for Tuesday, the 17th.
Questions for Aaron? Have the bids gone out have the requests for bids gone out for the high school and Hanover Street project yet? That's supposed to go out in January, right?
Yeah, it hasn't been out yet as far from that last meeting.
And I'm happy to report they went out today.
Super. Okay. When are they due?
Oh, I didn't open up the packet, so I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
Okay. Any other questions for Aaron? Thanks. policy committee met this past Monday. Kristen, do you want to update the board on the what we talked about?
Sure, if I can remember everything. We met Monday morning. We talked about, well, lots of different things. We talked about particularly about the superintendent evaluation process and super eval, both the superintendent's use of super eval and the board's follow-up with that, as well as the board's self-evaluations. We talked about timelines and maybe being more explicit about timelines for the evaluations as well as for reading and incorporating them. We did talk about communication, which Joanne had suggested, which is continually on our board goals year to year, and maybe need to strategize about how we might communicate with the community better. What else? We talked about a couple of different, right, there were some policies by the School Board Association for superintendent evaluation, but we're not going to use them, these various forms, because we are using the super eval product, which seems to be a little bit better for everybody. And then we did have some follow-up discussions about what we had questions about with the full board last meeting in regards to clubs, and also there was something else. Oh yes, Dick had found out about the public comment. So there are some edits that are being made. So yes, it is 30 minutes as a minimum, but we don't have to hold it open for a full 30 minutes. But and I remember I saw in the minutes from last meeting that you raised, Tim, about area residents speaking at meetings. I'm not sure if we have that explicitly on that. I was going to send another email to Joanne about that. But so there's a few of these policies that are before we bring them back again, there's a little bit more work being done. Yep.
So is there any work having to do with a policy where the superintendent will be evaluated by their subordinates?
Yeah, we talked about the survey and that was another question of, how to do a survey of, to gather information from all the stakeholders in the community. So the people who work for her in the district, as well as the parents and other community members, and about the interval and when that should take place, and if that should be tied in some way to contract renewals, and also to allow for feedback and upgrades or improvements or things before the next evaluation. So is that what you're making reference to?
No, because there was very specific requests that the principals have some kind of feedback for us about the work that the superintendent is doing. Because in most work environments, you have feedback from your subordinates. That's a very standard process in most businesses throughout the world. So what I'm wondering, and it's not done by a survey, it's done usually by a 360 review or some kind of based on very clear rubrics, and they can submit them anonymously, but that they would be in place and then requested every year.
Do you guys remember what we talked about in reference to a more specific evaluation? I'm not sure if on Monday. We talked about the evaluation process to put something in place for the incoming superintendent, which is going to be starting in July, whoever we get. So, and being clear and upfront with timelines of evaluations and things like that. So we're obviously going to continue with the yearly evaluation with the board going through with that, but then on top of that having, every 2 years or every 3 years it was suggested doing a larger community feedback through a particular survey. But what you're talking about, I'm not sure if we made any kind of particular conclusion about doing a very specific, we're not doing it wasn't suggested to do some kind of like interview feedback or something, personal feedback with the direct principals.
Well, I don't know if here is the place that we would do this communication like this, but I know for sure that we have requested that we
Right.
have the subordinates of the superintendent weighing in on a yearly basis, just like the evaluation process that the board is doing for the superintendent. So if it hasn't happened, that's okay, but it probably needs to be put in place before we move forward in the hiring process for the superintendent, so that we have something in place to clearly explain to the superintendent that is hired that we will be doing that.
Right, so that's a question to maybe in another forum, I'm not really sure if it is appropriate here, to think about what do we want to do, because they're still engaged in the superintendent search, so it's all kind of like still up there.
Yeah, I think that's it's because it's saying we're doing a timeline, but we don't have a timeline of what, right? Because our board goal, when we talked about this, was to change the process, right? So in order for us to give a timeline, we have to agree to what the changed process is. The board as a whole has to agree to what.
Well, I don't know if we were going to change the process as augment the process
right,
as it exists at the moment.
That's changing, right? So.
We're not throwing out what we're doing.
No, but we're adding to it. So that would have to go into whatever timeline. And I think that this might be a discussion that needs to happen. I don't want to negate what's happening in policy, but I also don't want policy to work on something and then come to the full board. And
we're not really working on anything. We were just in terms of shooting anything down. It's just a question of bringing that up about what is going to be a policy for evaluation of the superintendent, and that is coming from the NHSBA. But we don't need their forms and their materials, but the actual, the language of evaluation is essentially what we do. And then the question is, are we going to add on to that privately as the Lebanon School Board versus, what the state does or something.
Right, right, which is what we talked about when we made
so
the
maybe,
goal.
I don't know, is that a new business item or?
No, because
I have no idea.
the specific things that the policy committee talked about was the fact that the policies for superintendent evaluation and board self-evaluation are relatively skimpy and need to be fleshed out in more detail with timelines, content, and so forth. That's basically where things were. What was discussed. There was not any real discussion on how that would happen, how the evaluation would be conducted, beyond an endorsement of the super eval tool. Anything beyond that needs to be decided by the board.
Right, so I guess that's the question then, how do we decide that? In which way do we do that? Because I agree, I think it needs to be decided before we hire whoever this person is, or at least before they start, but probably before we hire them, and we're conceivably hiring them if everything goes well, soon, before February break, so.
But I guess I'd go to, I don't think we necessarily need to rush to have a policy completely fleshed out before we make an offer to your superintendent. I think it would be completely fair to the candidate to say, look, this is the direction that we're looking to take our review process, but there's not a lot of people that often take the job and then say, oh, and can you please outline in great detail what my review process is going to be before they, usually they're a little more concerned about other things. So I think giving a courtesy heads up that our board would like to do 360 reviews or more in depth and let them know so they can kind of have that in the back of their mind. But how you're reviewed is usually not one of your pivotal decisions of whether you're going to take the job or not.
I mean, I'm comfortable saying that to a candidate for sure. I think in that way, I want to make sure the board is comfortable doing that, right? Like that's.
Well, the board will have the opportunity to do that. I mean, finalists will come to the board, right? And that's the opportunity if any board member feels that the one of the finalists need to be told, look, we're going to be evaluating you in a particular way. You should know that before you accept any offer that's made. That's the opportunity to do it.
And then, regardless of whether they ask or we tell them, it also means that we still need, as a board, a timeline to figure this out before we hire them on July 1st, right? Because we want to make sure that however we're evaluating people is in place before new people come in.
I think that, so I think when we originally implemented Super Eval, there was a timeline attached to it. When the first 2 years, we did a partial year and then a full year, and in that evaluation, embedded in the first few pages was a timeline and a reason why we're doing this and stuff like that, which I have forwarded to Dick and Joanne, and I don't know why it doesn't still appear. So I think that the time frame isn't necessarily in question. I think we've got that kind of thing in.
Oh, no, I'm not questioning that. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. I'm questioning if we're going to add pieces to it, right, which is what we've all suggested, or many of us have suggested. If we're going to add pieces to that, then we need to have articulated for ourselves what those pieces are. Then we can put them into any timeline that's already there and augment it. But I'm talking about us as having this work done as a board. Would need to do that in a timely manner.
But I guess, realistically, you may not review your person. Do you have a 90-day initial review, a 6-month check-in review? So I think that we have a little bit of time, at least, either by the end of the year or by the first, by September 30th to have something in place. I don't think you have to rush to have it in place for June 30th. I think definitely making progress and marching towards that goal and have it in place by September 30th. But I don't think that we have to feel the pressure to have it in before the candidate's there.
Whatever comes of this is going to have to be a board decision. I agree with Lil, it's going to have to be discussed. Probably a matter of getting it on the agenda sometime after the March elections for the board to get together either as a separate meeting, as part of this meeting, as a retreat focused on evaluation, something of that nature, where the board can hash it out. I'm reluctant to rush into something that.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah,
though?
go ahead.
The only caution with that is that we're going to have new board members in March that won't have there could potentially be a few people that just have no insight into this discussion.
And we made this decision.
So much the better.
But no, we made this decision as a board after the last election, at our retreat after the last election. So why would we wait to act on that decision, that goal that we had after the last election, until we have the new people voted in? It seems like we're just.
To what goal are you referring?
The goal to change the superintendent evaluation procedure, which is what we talked about as part of our board goals with this board. So why would we wait until after the March election with a new set of people when we've already agreed that this is one of our goals for this year?
Well, I don't. What are you proposing?
I'm proposing.
To do it between now and the end of February?
Yes, that's what I've said originally. I think we have to. We can keep kicking it down the road. We do that very well, but we can also act. We can make decisions. We can move forward on things that we have articulated as being important priorities for ourselves. And this is only us. We are the only thing standing in our way. There are no other things that we have to worry about in terms of, except for time, but there's nothing else stopping us.
And would it make sense to have the conversation before policy? Because we'll meet probably again in
I don't think it's a policy issue. It's not a policy committee issue.
I think Joanne was doing with the policy, my understanding with the policy is to have some pieces in it to have some of the, like a survey and the frequency of that, or evaluation or whatever is part of that policy.
Oh, sure, and she'll.
So
and-
if we, what do we have for our January 25th meeting? Is this something that we could have a discussion there that would help inform policy in making their decision?
That doesn't seem unreasonable to have a first read of those revised policies by then. But to your point, Lil, I'm not sure that it's reasonable, though, to saddle a new board. It's going to be a new board. There were 4 seats up for election. I'm not sure that it's reasonable to saddle a new board with a procedure based on the feelings, agendas, whatever we might, however you might want to characterize
But Dick,
the current board. Tell them this is how you're going to do it.
Every action we take is that. I mean, every action we take, this is the board as it's currently constituted. This is the way that this board has made this decision. And then if it happens 4 months from now and there's a new group of people and they make different decisions, they make different decisions. I mean, we have a problem fulfilling our own goals. We don't do them. We put them on paper and we talk about them, but we don't come back to them unless they're goals that were already going to be completed. Like, we're going to have a strategic plan. Okay, that happened. But we don't come back to these. This is why what Kristen was saying earlier, the communication thing we've had on there for several years and we haven't come back to it. We haven't made any progress on it. Here we are again. We should really talk about that. Yes, we should. We put on the superintendent evaluation procedure needs to be changed. We said that's something that's a priority. Here we're coming to the point where we need to make that decision. We need to move that forward. Not make the decision. We made the decision. We need to move that forward and make progress. Why would we continue to wait when there's a whole new group of people coming in, or not? But why would we not act?
As you wish. I mean, it's the will of the board. If the board wants to devote a meeting to revamping the superintendent evaluation procedure, let's do it. I do not recall that specifically being a board that we're going to a goal that we were going to throw it out and recreate it.
It was in our board goals articulated explicitly. We talked about.
Well, let's get it on the agenda then before we spend any more money on super eval or anything else.
Well, I don't know.
All I'm saying is it's a 9-member board, and I'd like to see a little bit more consensus.
Oh, sure.
I'm not hearing Lil say get rid of super eval.
No.
I think what she's saying is there's pieces of the evaluation process that potentially some members of the board might desire to be enhanced.
So would it be reasonable for next board meeting for whoever on the board wants to put together an outline of what you actually think? Because, we're talking about it, but if I don't see something on paper, it's hard for me to kind of visualize. We have talked in the past about, the people who directly report to the superintendent going forward, that they have more insight than the board has, which is exactly what we talked about in the retreat. We don't have as much day-to-day insight because we sit here at the board meetings. So, but on the other hand, we also don't want to sap a lot of time of all of the administrators because they're so busy and everybody is, up to here with surveys. So I guess if there were some kind of outline of what people envision,
Sure.
that's realistic, is it something that needs to be done by an outside firm? Is it something that's going to require money?
Beyond
Is
what's
it-
already being done by the outside firm?
Yeah, no, I'm not
This would be
advocating for that. I'm
beyond
just
the
saying.
surveys that this
Right.
district pays for,
Right.
that are included
Do
in
we want
Joanne's.
do people want something else, or do we want to just use what we have and enhance it? So I'm throwing it out there to say, if we want to put it as an agenda item, I would like some more details about, something concrete.
So there are models, right? There's lots of different models, even just in the region, of ways that this is done. And I'm happy to give a list of models to show people what their options are. Again, this is not saying we get rid of super eval, absolutely not. I think it's very useful and does great things. And I think there might be something in super eval that we can use this way. I don't know, I have to look at it, but there are other models of things that people use that aren't requiring additional resources, but no new resources.
Would it make sense to have to create a small working group that can sit down and come up with a proposal that we can then have something tangible to discuss as a board? It's hard, right now it's a very nebulous conversation. If we have something, like Kristen said, something on paper, as a proposal, at least as a starting point, we can then use that as a platform.
And I guess to go along with that, I guess I'm not disagreeing that to change the evaluation, but we're also getting into the HR world, which has its own laws that are can be very delicate. So I guess, yes, we can have a work group, but I would not be comfortable voting on something that was not blessed by someone that has more HR experience and knows about employment laws or compliance, or having it blessed by legal to say that it actually is an acceptable evaluation process as well. So I guess it goes back to the point of, I don't think we can rush this and get it done by March, because I personally, no matter what the work group comes up voting with, would want it either blessed by our legal counsel or someone who is an expert in HR before we then went and committed it to policy.
But we could also have Xavier be part of a working group, right? I mean, he's our
if that's
HR
his
person.
If that's in his wheelhouse, yes. I mean, there's many different avenues of HR and people specialize in different things.
If it's happening in another school district, though, it's probably legal.
I personally am not comfortable assuming what another district does is legal without the advice of our own counsel.
I think, can I make one last comment too? I think the other thing that sort of came out of the policy meeting was whatever the board agrees to, that the board is committing to that process themselves. So if we're asking a superintendent to put information into super eval, that we're also agreeing, our part is that we're agreeing to look through that stuff and evaluate it fairly and to take time with it, that is respectful of the time that they've spent giving us this material. So I think if we just hold that in the back of our intentions when we're creating these things would be helpful.
Let's, I'm not crazy about the idea of setting up a working group. I think we already have a ton of committees. And we're also having this discussion without the superintendent present, who could provide some useful information for what would be helpful for someone new coming into the job. But I am sensitive to the need to move this forward. So why don't we, by the next meeting, we ought to have these revised policies laying out expectations on the expectations for super eval and for board self-eval. And let's put that on the agenda, and the superintendent will be here. We can have Javier here if we need to, and decide what the best way is to proceed. I don't think we're going to do anything further tonight. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
I guess what I would just want as some clarification is, as we are about to embark on meeting and reviewing potential candidates, is it fair to say as an answer, if we are asked by any of these candidates about our evaluation process, that we are moving to a 360 type of evaluation of that position?
Oh, I don't think that would be reasonable at all.
So I guess that's what we're...
I mean, you know, again, we can talk about this in a lot more detail, and if it's a separate, you know, as an agenda item at our next meeting, you know. But you know, the notion of 360s is certainly not not, the value of that is certainly not universally accepted.
So I think
We
that's
have,
where-
I mean, it's I'm sorry?
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt.
There are multiple surveys already going on. I have to say, in reference to what Wendy just said, this is data that the board has not really delved into. The data from those surveys that Amanda Silver does for us every year, polling various stakeholders, including administrators and employees. No, I don't think this board has endorsed some form of a 360 evaluation at all. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's something the board could certainly vote on.
I think it's important as we are about to bring candidates or start conversations with candidates. Because it's conceivable that we will be asked on how we evaluate that position.
Mm-hmm. Dick, remembering the conversation from policy, I think so the survey that Amanda Silver has done for us historically has been tied to the strategic plan and helping to form that. And embedded in that are some questions related to the superintendent. I think in policy, if I'm remembering our conversation correctly, we had the conversation to still continue that process, but then have a second process that is just related to the evaluation of the superintendent that would still go out to stakeholders, but maybe not the community as a whole. And that would be like an every 2-year process. So, loosely maybe a 360 evaluation, but not the way that I think a true 360 evaluation is done. So something that would be done by an outside, maybe an Amanda Silver person. Questions would be more specific around leadership qualities and the things that we want to evaluate the superintendent on would be not only go to her direct reports, but to the school community as a whole. So I think that we initiated that conversation, and there did seem to be some agreement that every year might be too much, 2 years is probably good, 3 years is probably too
Well, yeah,
long.
that we did have that conversation, and Kristen can back that up. But again, that's beyond the brief of the policy committee. I mean, that's the sort of thing that,
I think she was-
as an example, could be included.
Right. I think that what Joanne was looking to do is have a few bullet items added to the New Hampshire School Board policy that had indicated that that was our intention.
Yeah. So let's get that back at the next meeting, and we can see where we are, right?
Yeah, just as an update, that is those additions and things are being drafted to our policy. So when you say the next meeting, you mean our next policy meeting?
No,
right?
next board meeting.
Our next board meeting.
Yeah, Joanne should be able to have that.
Oh, okay. Did she say she would have that?
Well, we can check with her.
Talked about it,
She's
but-
not here, so I
Right.
can't speak for her.
Okay.
So I just want to clarify that on the board goals for 2022, 2023, it clearly states refine superintendent review process to include input from principals and SAU staff to be put into place for incoming superintendent.
Right.
Yep. Sure.
That's this year.
So,
Okay. So everyone comfortable with, we'll get this on the agenda for the next board meeting?
Yep.
When the superintendent's here? Okay.
So I have a question about that. Is it a good idea to bring anything with us from the other districts that are models, or do you want to simply have a conversation in theory about the evaluative process, or what would you like to see?
I would suggest if you have anything, you want to bring anything that contributes to the conversation, let's do it.
Okay.
So if they have models or samples, is that something that can be included in our packet so that we can
read it in advance.
We just have to get them in advance, but yeah, I think we can do that.
I don't want to throw a muck into this, but
Oh, go for it.
while I was teaching, we used to get a survey sort of to fill out about our principals. And that survey was sent to the superintendent as part of that evaluation. And it has long since gone away, so I don't know what happened to all that. But if you're going to do it with the superintendent, I would think you would want to do it with your principals. Just to keep it in mind.
Okay. Moving on to EC.
We met on Monday and we talked with Karen about her current status with the curriculum review committees across the district and what successes they've had and where they are in the process, which was very helpful. We talked a lot, the committee talked a lot about the calendar going forward, what topics are what projects are reachable in the time that we have and the time that Karen has, which was very helpful, and had a lot of discussion about the role of Karen's role and the EC committee's role and how we work together. So that was a very productive meeting. Oh, we talked a tiny little bit about enrichment and acceleration, and per the last EC meeting and per the discussions that we had during budget discussions, SALT is going to get together again and address enrichment and acceleration and differentiation, decide on terms, definitions for those terms, and what constitutes acceleration in the district, what constitutes enrichment, what constitutes differentiation, so that we can more clearly articulate that, because it wasn't very clearly articulated in the first proposal that we got. So we're just waiting to see.
Questions?
Just for somebody who hadn't ever been a part of EC until recently and does not have extensive education background, it was very insightful, the discussions that were happening in the committee around curriculum development, design, all of that, and the hard work that is happening throughout our district in that realm. And I had no appreciation of it until we were having those conversations. And so hopefully at some point, Karen or somebody comes before this board and gives some insight into how much time and effort and work that takes, and so that we make sure that we're not setting unrealistic expectations on our district to really push some of this stuff forward, but be realistic on how much it really takes. I think would be, I just had no idea, and I was humbled by their work.
Our educators do a lot on their own time on behalf of us.
And it sounded like it's well supported in the district, so that there was appreciation for that, but just had no sense of what they're trying to accomplish with this publishing of curriculum and stuff like that. So.
Thank you. Policy and negotiations has not met. Student Wellness Advisory Committee met January 4th.
So I met with that committee, and we were discussing the free and reduced lunch enrollment, and that it actually has increased. They continue to appeal to students that have outstanding balances by offering them that application. That's like a standard process. There was an update from the director of, what's the meal service? Cafe service?
Fresh Picks.
Fresh Picks. And that he had started some new meal options. There's a hot option now at the Mount Leb and Hanover Street, and I think a cold option, but also maybe a vegetarian option. So the kids were getting many more opportunities to choose things, and he was finding that Out of the 3, there was about the same number of people choosing each of the 3 things, which I thought was pretty interesting. The person who is in charge seems very enlivened and excited about his work, so that was nice to hear. And we mostly just talked about nutrition and kids and food, and that's all. Yeah.
Thanks. Questions? Okay. Harvard Area Career Technical Center next meets in March the 14th. Area Committee will meet on February 28th here. The School District City Task Force next meets Friday, January the 27th at City Hall. The track fundraising subcommittee's work is essentially complete, and that'll be meeting later on this month. That wraps it up for committee updates. Future agenda items, we just finished a discussion about. Any additional requests for agenda additions or questions for the administration? Okay, important dates and announcements. Next board meeting is Wednesday, January the 25th. Deliberative session, Saturday, February the 4th. We did, I think I sent out all that information today. The city clerk was a little late about getting out dates for filing for elections, and that was clarified. The period opens January 31st and closes February.
It was after the deliberative session.
It was after the deliberative session, February.
I think it's 14th.
14th, yeah, February 14th, so it's over for about 2 weeks. So it gives us the opportunity to talk it up at the deliberative session, try to get more involvement. So that's that. Superintendent search update. The deadline for applications is this Friday. So far, we have, I want to say 9 applications, I think. Let me just verify that now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 applicants so far. And there, as an expectation, there will be more that will come in before Friday. But the search committee has not met, and since that the school spring posting went out, is scheduled to meet next week to go through the applications after the deadline. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second by MJ. All in favor? We are adjourned.
Recording.
Sorry?
Yes. So we don't need to worry about this? Worrying on that.
I just got to read the point. Yeah, just Kristen pointed out that we didn't set a date. Why don't you're the chair, why don't you work it out? I can be available anytime.
They have been coinciding.
Yeah, the
My EC
13th
meeting
is
on-
fine. The following week, so.
Is the big, yeah, right.
Why don't you send out an email to the members, to Joanne?
Yep.
Make sure that she's available.
That's not.
I think Mary's in her only other one, right?
Yeah.
Secretary.
Oh, sorry that they lost.
Roller coaster season, they didn't really deserve it. Actually, I have 2. One for each kid.